Hey, welcome back to the Lead Counsel Podcast. Your host, Tom Tona. Before we jump into today's topic, I just want to take a minute to thank the sponsors of the podcast. This episode is sponsored by Tona Law. They're not just another law firm. They're defining what it means to fight for their clients. We get a lot of attorney referrals from across the country. We pay fee participation in all jurisdictions where it's permitted. We focus on integrity, innovation, and relentless advocacy. Tona Law is proving that the business of law can scale without losing its heart. Do you want to see how a modern firm is built for impact and happy client referrals? Check out tonalaw.com. Mention again the Lead Counsel Podcast, and I'm happy to get on the phone with you. I am joined today by Lee Rudin at Rudin Law, personal injury attorney out of New Orleans. Welcome, Lee. How are you?
Good, Tom. We're going to X off the lead part. We're going to call it the Lead Counsel Podcast for this episode.
Lead Counsel
Podcast.
So I'm excited to have you on. You and I spoke about probably in the last month. I was introduced to you through a mutual friend, and we started talking about certain vendors, and I started following you on social media, and I was like, oh, this guy's doing some awesome social media stuff. We have to get on here and talk about his marketing, his branding, all of it. So
appreciate it.
Welcome to the show, man.
No, I joke, I love talking to you, Tom, because you sound like home. I grew up in the Northeast, right? So whenever I talk to somebody, an adjuster, whatever, I'm like, where are you from? And they're like, oh, I'm in Florida. I'm like, no. Where are you from?
Right,
and then I get to Long Island, New York, New Jersey. I'm like, okay, you sound like where I'm from.
Well, it's funny. So I talked to another vendor that I'm dancing with right now. Well, I should say my COO is dancing with, but the person must have done some research on me because he got in and he's from, hey, I'm from Long Island. And I was like, he was pouring it on really thick. My cousin Vinny thick. And I was like, hey man, with me, I've never even seen my cousin Vinny. Like, this is who I am. You don't have to pour it on that thick. I get it. You're from Long Island. We're good. I still need best pricing, right? So listen, one of the reasons why I was really interested in meeting you in person after talking to you on the phone is the branding, right? So let's just jump right into it. The name of this podcast is going to be probably Stop Being Polite and Get Rude. You came up with this play on your last name, Get Rude. So what's the genesis of the branding?
Yeah. So, I've said this a couple of times. This doesn't work, right? The rude branding doesn't work if you're an immigration lawyer, if you're maybe an employment lawyer, but like if you do trust and estates, it doesn't work. But in our business, people are used to the hammers and the strong arms. And so I kind of figured that aggressive idea was going to be received, at least by a segment of the client base, which is really all you need to succeed. And it fits with my personality, right? It fits with that Northeast swagger. I've always been kind of a no nonsense, no bullshit. I don't care what you think about what I say. If I believe it, I'm going to say it. And again, people come to us, you can echo the sentiment, because someone screwed them over. It could be their own insurer. It could be, the other party's insurer. But some way or another, they're pissed. And so they want someone who's going to fight for them. So I figured this branding was going to work. And I think in trying to dissect it, like where did it really come from? Back in the 90s, when The Real World was the rage on MTV.
Yep.
They used to say stop acting polite and start being real, something like that. And that must be in my subconscious because as I was word playing this, like with the get rude, that stop being polite, get rude seemed to flow really well. And I tell you, Tom, you could see the shirt that I'm wearing. You've probably seen all the crap. I have shirts, very simple. The front says stop being polite. The back says get rude. The positive feedback I get from people is insane. They're like, where'd you get that shirt? I love that. Can you send me one? And I do all the time.
That's awesome. Yeah. And you're onto something when people want your swag, even if they're not a client, right? Like,
that's right.
I'll give you as many shirts as you want, as many sweatshirts as you want. You wearing my name. I don't care,
Tom, it's like kind of become my thing, obviously locally, but I spoke at PIMCon in October and I brought like 50 t-shirts. I think I came home with one because the size was just weird.
Right.
I went to NTL in January a couple of weeks ago. And I made shirts that were like in the Miami Vice colors.
Oh,
so black
that's great.
Like pink and blue. And they look like neon. And again, like saw friends, they're like, oh, you got any shirts? And like everyone was gone. Every single shirt.
Dude, so listen, I think it's amazing because, we're in 2026. You just launched your firm in June of 23. That's kind of crazy traction, man, for you to be at that point you're at branding wise and everything else. So did you work with somebody on the branding or was this all internal?
It's all me. I grew up when I was in high school, I was in like a marketing organization. I've always kind of had this mind for, let's say, sales and marketing. I remember being a kid and like writing in a composition notebook, like writing these parody songs after like whatever pop songs. And, I was a wrestling fan growing up. So I joke, like being on the podcast, doing the social media videos, that's like running a promo in the shower when I was a kid, pretending I was the wrestler.
Right.
Or it's writing the parody songs that I was writing as a kid, but now I'm doing it dressed as the Grinch, making fun of insurance companies. Like it's the same thing, but just taken to another level. And because I like it so much, it's not a chore. I have these ideas that come up in my head and I'll write them in a Google, draft email to myself or in some sort of spreadsheet. And then I go back to them and say, all right, when do I want to use this one? Or where would it fit the merch? Like I got a more Canva designs than I can imagine. It's just a matter of when do I want to print them.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
No, I love it. And it's about authenticity, right? I was talking to somebody this morning. I don't know if you're connected with Riley Harrison. He's big on Twitter, right? Young guy, but he's doing incredible stuff on social media. And, I'm convinced. I went into this year and I actually have a marketing fractional CMO who listened to me. Like the guy for the first time wasn't selling me anything and he listened to me. And then he gave me a strategy that was cohesive because he wasn't selling me anything. So there was no tactics. It was, okay, now let's find you the vendors. And I said this year was the year that I go heavy into social because I still feel like while there's a ton of attorneys doing it, there aren't a ton of attorneys doing it the way you're doing it. And, I can see where the future lays, at least in the short term,
Tom, this is the funny thing. And it's interesting because I've seen this post now a couple times recently. I think Jen Gore did it. I saw someone else do it. You'd be surprised how few people actually see our stuff, actually absorb it, right? Like when lawyers in 2026 are still getting the question of, hey, can I call you for a free consultation? Like for contingency fee plaintiff attorneys.
Right.
We literally have it in every advertisement. And yet the public hasn't absorbed it the way we have. I think that lawyers, we have somewhat of an echo chamber. Like because we see everyone's stuff. We love it. The algorithm pushes them to us. We think everybody else is seeing it and they're not. But the key to get them to see it is to be different. Because if you're just going to put out a post with the 5 things you should do after an accident, like who the cares? So is everybody else putting that crap out.
They're scrolling right past that,
Tom, what I just did last year, right before, I think it was a Super Bowl here in New Orleans. I did a video. I was dressed like Bobby Boucher from The Waterboy, but I was Rudy Boucher, his cousin. And I did the Bobby Boucher accent, and I did a whole skit about the Super Bowl coming to New Orleans and you should hire Rudin Law, yada, yada, yada. Then I did it again for the start of the football season. And then I just cut another one for this recent Super Bowl. And I boosted it on social. And I think I added in like the 4 days that I boosted it, 150 new followers.
Wow.
Because it wasn't just a lawyer saying, here are 5 things you should do after an accident.
You're entertaining people.
Trying.
Yeah.
You got to stop them in their tracks.
You got to set yourself apart. And we share the same belief that it's just the space is too crowded, right? Now, everybody who has a law degree decides they can do personal injury, which they can't. And what clients don't know the difference. And all the lawyers, if they're fighting the wrong people, right? They think, oh, Lee's my competition. I can't share with him. Or Tom's my competition. That's not the case. Only 50% of the general public even seeks out a lawyer. That's a statistic I got at one of the recent masterminds I was at. So the enemy is the insurance company. The enemy is the politician that is now trying to pass tort reform in New York under the guise of billboard lawyers have inflated car insurance, right? And she's trying to get that passed, and she wants to take away their rights. They said, well, we're not going to take away your rights. We're just going to cut the legal fees from 1/3 to 10%. Well, guess what?
Right.
No lawyer is going to represent people for that. Then they're just going to shift to something else. So I do think, your philosophy of being bold in your marketing is 100%, but you're authentic, right? You're having a good time with it and you're being authentic. I'm not going to try to be you. I have a different personality, although we have some similarities, and, my stuff will be out in the next, 60 days or so, and you'll see like it'll start to track because I know that they've captured my voice already.
Tom, you got to set the tone.
Got to set the tone. With Tona.
Come on.
With Tona, man.
Tona.
I love it.
Easy. It writes itself.
I love it.
It writes itself. But you're right. You can see what's happening in California with Uber.
Well, they came to New York. They came to New York and they're doing the same thing.
Of course they did. And, hopefully the people see through it. But You see what's happened in our political system. Like, people can be easily persuaded if the messaging is right. And, we've seen it. We saw it with tobacco. We saw it with big sugar. Like, there's a playbook to put out misinformation, get the public to buy it, and they don't know what's hit them until they're 6 feet under. And, the thing with what's going on with Uber, that doesn't happen if lawyers, plaintiff lawyers, figure out all the terrible things that they're doing on the back end.
Right. And it's funny because you mentioned Jen Gore. I was texting with her. I mean, there's a massive litigation going on in California with Uber because of the fact that they pumped all this money into the political landscape to vilify the PI lawyers. So now they're copying that playbook in New York. It was inevitable, right? They went from one blue state to another, and they got our governor, and they're going after personal injury lawyers hard, especially if you do auto, right?
Well, here, we had our couple bouts of tort reform the last couple of years, but for some of the big injury lawyers in Louisiana, it probably would have passed worse, but they got to the governor and said, wait a minute, like, this is not going to do what you think. And I've said this on other podcasts. I'm all for tort reform. Prove to me, guarantee me that if you cut something that's supposed to benefit the consumer actually benefits.
Never going to happen. It's never going to happen.
I know that.
And it happened in Florida. Florida's the perfect use case. They did exactly the tort reform they wanted to do. And do you think there was any savings for the consumer, any benefit for the consumer? No, they're not passing it along.
And when you see the shell game of, they're showing a loss in this company, but the profits in the other company, the related company, are through the roof. If they were showing these losses, how are the CEOs making multi-million-dollar, if not billion-dollar profits, bonuses, et cetera?
Right.
How does that happen?
Right. No, look, I'm with you, man. I'm with you. And so, I'm going heavy on the marketing side this year, heavier than I ever did. And, my take on it is, everybody. Did you ever read the book Anxious Generation?
I literally have it sitting on my desk at home because I want to read it for my kids' sake.
How old are your kids?
I got a 6.5-year-old little girl and a 3.5-year-old little girl.
Now's the time to read it because social media is extremely detrimental to little girls. And I have a 16-year-old now who's not so little, but I made her a deal about Anxious Generation. I said, look, I want you to read it because she's super smart. And then I don't have to tell her about the evils of it because she digests that stuff really well. But the point that I brought that up, I kind of went off on a tangent, is the majority of people in the country, in the world, are getting their news from social media. So for anybody who's listening to this, because mostly just lawyers and law related, you got to be on social. You got to be on social so heavy that people can't not know you if you're local to them, right?
The other thing about it, Tom, don't just think that posting on your own account is sufficient. I call that defensive social media, defensive internet presence, where you have to have a website. It's got to look like it's been updated recently, not 1994, right? And you have to have content on your page so that when people go there for social proof, they can see that you're a real lawyer.
Right.
With that said, if you're not being aggressive and outwardly trying to reach out to people through, let's say, boosted posts or legitimately running ads on Facebook and Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, the algorithm's not going to get your content to them.
No, it's pay to play. It's pay to play for sure. I mean, Gary Vee says it. Like, there is no organic reach on Instagram or Facebook unless you're an outlier or you're a 20-something-year-old young female model lookalike type of thing. You're not going to get that traction. You have to pay.
Gary Vee also said, he said it 10 years ago. He said, the phone isn't the second screen, it's the first one. That means that now the phone is the primary source, not the TV. And especially with connected TV, treat it like a phone anyway.
Right.
Your commercials airing.
So I had somebody trying to sell me some advertising at the local airport. It's literally 5 minutes from my office. So what did I do? I got in a car one day and I'm like, I'm just going to canvas where they're putting these ads up. And you know what I saw at the baggage claim? Everyone looking down at their phone. So hopefully people are listening to this and they resonate. Like, if you've got a budget, one of your first looks should be social media because, especially I'm convinced after talking to you and a couple of other people that are using some of the same vendors that we are, hands down, you got to be looking at social media hard and paid social media, just understanding, like you said, you're not going to get any traction on the established social media brands. They're built to monetize. Period. Hard stop. Same as Google, right? Same as Google.
I think the difference between Google and paid social is that, yes, Google, with LSAs, PPC, there's an opportunity for some direct response and case acquisition through there. There's also a similar opportunity through Meta or other paid social, but there's also the attendant brand building that comes with it because you're hitting them over and over with you, right? Your face, your video, as opposed to just a name that you're one of a million.
Right.
But now they're at least seeing you.
Right.
They know who you are, hopefully, if you hit them enough.
Right. So you went out 3 years ago. What was the deciding point? I always like to hear from people their inflection point of like, hey, I'm done. I'm going out on my own.
Yeah, my villain origin story.
Yeah.
So I was working with a good buddy of mine at a firm that I actually clerked out when I was in law school, and came back around to work with them 7-ish years after I graduated. And I really liked it. It was a good firm, good people, young peers of mine that were all kind of rising together. But unintentionally and organically, I grew a plaintiff PI practice in that insurance defense firm. Just by helping some people, right? They let me do it. They never envisioned, they had a separate plaintiff bonus deal. They never envisioned that someone would see that deal, realize that it made more sense financially, and then go leverage it to the hilt. And I did. And at one point, right before I left, they said to me, Lee, we didn't think this was going to go this way. We need to change the deal and we need to limit what you're bringing in. And I said, fuck if you're doing that and fuck if you're doing that.
Right.
So then I'm about to leave for vacation when this happens. I go to Mexico with my family. The whole time I'm there, I'm calling other lawyers that I knew to figure out what do I need to do if I want to start this on my own. And people were very kind with advice. They offered, office space. Do I want to partner on cases? Really just really, really kind and generous. And I figured out this was what I had to do. It really was the offer I had to refuse. And my buddy, after a month of not talking about what they had said, finally corners me in my office, shuts the door and is like, Lee, this is not like you to not say anything after we kind of gave you this ultimatum. And I was like, I got to go. And he's like, you know what? I think you should. I figured that was the answer, but I think you should.
Right.
And that was it.
It's funny, the inflection points, anytime you go to change a deal, anytime you go to limit somebody who's doing something they're enjoying doing and they're making a lot of money doing, you might as well just say, look, it's time to converse about you leaving, right? Because you're not going to turn around and you like what you're doing and you're making good money at it. You're not going to be okay with that. You're clearly succeeding at something. Hey, we don't want you to be so successful at it.
I had a conversation with a buddy of mine, owns a PI practice here in New Orleans, and we were talking about just the expenses of running a firm. And he was talking about the holiday party, the excess of the holiday party, particularly as you grow, right? If you have a lot of people, right, even just doing the little thing en masse is expensive. And he said, but the problem is once you do it, you can't pull it back because it becomes the expectation.
Yes.
Right. Similarly, with the discriminatory bonus, if you give it, they're expecting you to give it if they continue to perform the same way. And what's your rationale for not doing it?
Right.
There really isn't.
Which is why I hate discretionary bonuses. I learned in masterminds years ago, do away with it, set KPIs, let people control the outcomes of what they're doing. That's a true incentive. The way these companies do these discretionary bonuses, like you said, it causes turnover. It causes people to leave because all of a sudden there's no rhyme or reason to it.
Well, you also don't need to choreograph it, right? If the firm hits a big number on a case and you want to throw everybody $1,000, right? Just because, that's a real discretionary bonus.
Right.
You're just being generous, throwing out money because the firm did so well and you want the rising tide to lift all the boats.
Right.
That's different. But I think you also, you can have your discretion with your KPIs. You set them where you want. You make sure that you're crediting the things that matter to you as the firm owner.
Yes.
And, but like you said, you give your individuals control over their destiny.
Yeah. And people want ownership. I always liken it to you have young kids. What do they say? What's the first thing kids learn? Mine, right? They want ownership. So what I'm seeing now, and I've had some really interesting operational changes over the last 3 years with EOS, man, you just turn over, you grow, you break stuff, you turn over again. And I've got a killer crew right now. Best crew I've ever had. And hands down, best crew. And they want to own shit. They want to own the results. They want to own the outcomes. And when there are people on the team that are holding them back, they start grousing. They start grumbling. They're like, hey, man, I want to be on a winning team. A players want to win. And I love A players because I want to win. So for me, I'm with you on that. Give them the tools, let them own it. But I'm a different type of owner altogether. I don't know about you, but I'm good with letting go. Like, I'm good with delegation. You can't scale. Like, I know that just from the little I know about you, you want to scale a sizable firm. You're not doing the marketing you're doing and investing your time the way you're investing it to not scale a real sizable competitor in the marketplace. And you're in New Orleans. You know, that's about as red of an ocean as you can get, similar to New York, where you can literally throw a pen and hit a personal injury attorney or somebody who calls themselves a PI attorney because they thought it was going to be easy money, right? Have you tried cases, by the way?
I have.
Okay.
You know, one of the limitations, right, being a defense lawyer is your hands get tied and not of your own volition, right? Your client dictates whether you go. You know, I joke, somebody asked me, you know, were you able to try cases since you started your firm? I said, yeah. And the nice part about it is I get to decide.
Right.
The client gets to decide ultimately. But if I want to go and the client's game, we get to go.
Right.
So, you know, and I think part of that too is conditioning the clients. You know, I've got a couple right now where I'm looking at them and saying, guys, if we are not getting the number that we think is appropriate, we're going to try it because your cases are good and they're positioned well and we can. So let's do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, and it's funny because there was a school of thought out there for a while of nobody wanted to hire a defense lawyer straight from the defense side because of the mindset shift that has to occur to do plaintiff's work, right? But I meet Rich Gottschall. He's in Jersey.
Yeah.
He's a killer trial guy.
Yeah. Gotcha.
I mean, you meet him, nicest guy you'll ever meet. He's a savage trial guy who came from the defense side.
Hold on. I want to take a step back. I want to talk about that firm.
Yeah.
Right? Because that firm, in terms of branding, that's how you do it, right? Your name, Ostroff Gottschall, who gives a shit? No one's wearing that on their shirt. They're not.
Right.
But now
we're the
play
OGs.
With OG,
I love
the
it.
OGs. Now you have a different marketability. And you know what? They're in Jersey, right? That OG should be on Rutgers color gear. In South Jersey, it should be on Eagles colors. In North Jersey, it should be on Jets and Giants. And they should be giving that shit out like it's water. Because if anyone wants to rock the OG, that's a win for them.
Yeah, and it will be because I know Rich. I've met him at masterminds. I've also met his second in command, Marina. And she is a really hungry, really aggressive operator. So they're going, man. And I'm watching it. I do love that branding. I do love that OG brand. And I think it's just him because he bought out Ostroff, but they kept the name.
Yeah.
Quick break to thank the sponsors of the podcast. This episode is supported by Tona Law, a modern law firm built on integrity and innovation. Learn how they're changing the game at tonalaw.com. Attorney referrals accepted from across the country. You'll see what it's like when you send us a case. You'll have some happy clients. So talk about your brand for a second, the whole Get Rude brand. Did anybody ever say, hey, Lee, probably not a good idea?
Oh, yeah. So many people. My wife, my dad. So it's funny. I was on Bill Umansky's podcast.
Yeah, I love Bill.
I love right. Bill. And so Bill and I met at PimCon, and then I happened to be going to Orlando, and he's like, you know, we do it live. I'm like, I'm going to be in your state, in your city. Like, I'll come over. We'll do it. And when he and I were talking, we were joking about like crazy branding ideas. And I said, I want to make this hat. And like my wife's telling me I can't do it. Like absolutely not. It says, I have it. It says, make America rude again. Oh. And Bill's like, I want one. Like, that's my guy. I want one. I'm like, you got it. So there's literally two in the world. He has one. I have one. And then as soon as I put out a picture with it, you couldn't believe how many people are like, I want that hat. I want that hat. I want that hat. So we got another batch coming.
Tell me they're red and white, dude. Tell me they're red
and
white.
They're not.
Oh, okay.
No, they're black and gold.
Okay.
They're black and gold like New Orleans.
Smart move. I like it for a couple of reasons.
It's polarizing in whatever way you want it to be polarized. Right. So you know, that's the thing, right? I want to hit it down the middle. I've got my opinions. Not everyone's going to like them. But, you know, this brand, you ask, like, who thinks it's a bad idea? My daughter, she goes to a public school here. Their motto is be kind. And I told my wife every time, she's like, do you want to sponsor it? I'm like, I'll sponsor it as long as I can make koozies or shirts or hats that say be kind, get rude. And when the administration pushes back, I'm going to be like, wait a minute. Like, don't we want our kids, our young kids, our minorities, our women to stand up for themselves, push back, to get rude when someone's telling them they can't do something? Yeah, we do.
Right. Have boundaries, right? Like, that's basically listen, you and I have a lot more in common than I thought. So, you know, I'm a scrappy guy. I'm 57 and I talk a lot about my jujitsu training and martial arts and stuff like that. That was born out of necessity because I was always sticking up for people, right? I was always sticking up for myself because I weighed 150 pounds. I'm a short guy. And I was getting the crap kicked out of me and I was bullied a lot. So I had to learn to fight. I did learn to fight. And then I realized my friends were all getting the crap kicked out of them. So I would jump in. They would leave me And I still get the crap kicked out of me, but I had to really learn to fight. But I taught my daughter the same thing. And my daughter, she trains here and there with me and we roughhouse or whatever, but I've trained her enough that she can handle her own. And I want the same thing. You're a girl, Dad. You know, man, like, I don't want my daughter to be too nice. I don't want my daughter to be too accepting of anything. And I want her to have concrete boundaries. And that's really what you're talking about. So your brand is not about disrespecting people. It's about encouraging people to stand up for themselves and not take shit. And that I love.
100%, right? I'll get calls from adjusters and they're like, you're actually not as bad as I thought you were going to be. I said, it's not be rude, it's get rude. Right. And so if I have to be, if I get more bees with honey, we'll play the honey card. And if I got to do it with vinegar, like we'll play the vinegar card. But the point is, you got to have all the tools in the tool belt. And if you're a pushover in this business, you're going to get run over.
Yes.
So that doesn't work. And that's everywhere in life. I think that some of the things that we're experiencing in our country, whatever side you're on, if people spoke up a little sooner, maybe we're not there.
Right. And I find that it's, again, I have the benefit of being 57, which I'm starting to realize why as you age, you get wisdom. It's from observing, right? It's from learning from what you're observing. And I'm amazed at the population that I see or observe about lack of boundaries, how people actually feel bad just saying no. Like, let's have a conversation. One of the core values of my firm is kind candor. I have the toughest conversations with people, but it's not tough for me because I just say, look, this is what we need. This is what you want to do. We're not in alignment. So we just need to part ways. It's not emotional. I don't feel bad. I'm giving somebody the opportunity to go find what they actually want, right? So I'm a big believer in have boundaries. I tell people, make your boundaries concrete. Don't move boundaries for anybody, right? So I kind of love the branding that you're doing because I love that it's get rude, not be rude. I'm not a big believer in be rude. I tell people, listen, I have a whole spectrum of capabilities and tools, like you were saying in your tool belt. I don't start out at level 1,000, but I can do level 1,000 really well. Like, I'm an intense guy. And I'm kind of built for it, where other people are like, it's a high conflict scenario. They're like, send Tom in. I'm good. I don't care.
Tom, it's funny. I tell people on the team, I'm like, you're not going to embarrass us. You are not permitted to embarrass this firm. I will do the embarrassing, right? Like, I'll be the bad guy. I'll be the one to drag my name through the mud if that's what it takes. That's not your job. It's not your responsibility either.
Right.
So, if someone's got to be the bad guy, I'm happy to be the bad guy if that's what it takes.
Right.
So.
Right. No, again, I think that there's a lot to your brand that I find so interesting because it gives people permission, right? Too many people, especially, I love the idea of my teenage daughter hearing this, but there's a time not to be polite. There's a time to have those boundaries. And listen, I don't deal with adjusters anymore and I'm not in court. I have lawyers that I'm scaled to do that, right? And you're getting there if you're not there already. But the idea is I will treat you as polite as you treat me right up until the time you're not polite. And then we have a different issue. Listen, when I was a much younger man, I was known to say across the table, like, are you really talking to me that way right now?
Yep.
Like, maybe we should go in the parking lot and sort this out. I'd said that once at a closing. I used to do real estate and I was at a closing and this guy was abusing my team. And then I get there and he's just screaming and slapping his hands on the table. I'm like, let's go outside and talk in the parking lot. He's like, we could talk here. I go, no. We're going to talk in the parking lot. And then one of us is going to come back to the room and finish the closing. And the other one's not. Because I find that people are so comfortable. Maybe it's even lawyers. Maybe it's the legal animosity space of, litigation, whatever it is. Like, dude, I train with killers. Like, straight up, the nicest guys you'll ever meet. But one of my friends was ranked #1 in jiu-jitsu in the country, right? Like, he'll put a smile on his face. But if you ever cross the guy, like, you got to know your limits. And I find lawyers feel like their suits are like bulletproof.
Well, I'll give you 2 nuggets here, right? So there's obviously that. There's the keyboard warriors.
Yeah.
They wouldn't say boo to you if you were in the room, but they're happy to type it. I play pickup basketball like pretty competitively now. And I'm not a great basketball player.
But that's a high conflict sport.
Right? I play good defense. I rebound. People love me on their team because I do all the grunt work, the
dirty work, yeah.
But I'm in the paint with a guy and he's backing me down. And then like later on, he's trying to run through my picks, like lowering his shoulder. I'm like, dude, like I'm not out here to get hurt. I'm not going to try to hurt you. Don't try to hurt me. Then like the next time he does it, I smack him on the back of the head. He's like, what are you hitting me for? I'm like, dude, I told you last time this isn't going to happen again. Now you decide you want to come back here and do it again. You're going to get another smack, and then the next time the hand's going to be closed, right?
Right.
So like, this is it. You could talk tough until someone actually pushes you back, right?
Yeah.
Until the bully gets punched in the face, and all of a sudden it's not so funny anymore.
Yeah, and it's funny because it does still go on. I do see it a lot in the legal space. I mean, I see people try it on the phone, and I tell my whole team, I'm like, that's when you just get me on the phone. Just get me on the phone. I'll talk to them. I'll try to calm the situation down. But there are some lawyers out there, man, they don't know. They don't know.
And Tom, we're white males, right? You're older than me, right? Think about if we weren't us, right? When I hear the shit about the way people treat, young lawyers, young female
lawyers especially,
that makes my blood boil. I'm like, I wish I was in that room when I hear some of the feedback, because that would never happen.
Right. No, and I'm the same way. I've actually picked up the phone when I've heard it happening with staff. And I've had those conversations with clients. I've turned away clients that had very multiple six-figure cases because of the way they were treating staff, right? Like, You can't allow it, not at all, to creep into your workplace. You just can't.
I agree. You have to stand up for them, right? And I think that what you just said is the key. I've fired several clients recently.
Yes.
That they were just out of line with me, with the team. I can't have it.
Yeah.
Can't happen because it's unacceptable.
Yeah. And again, just circling back to the brand and the strategy. I mean, I don't know that you ever saw where it's going to go or where it's currently going, but I mean, this thing is, I like it. I like it a lot. And I think that it breaks through the noise. I think that tactically you're positioning yourself where no one else can position themselves in your market, right? Like, it lends itself for everything. You could play on TV, you could do social, whatever it is, but especially in PI, right? Everybody's saying the same thing. I fight for the little guy. Fight for the little guy, fight for the little guy. I'm like, all right.
Isn't that the minimum, Tom, right? We're going to fight for you. We're going to try to get you the most money possible. Like, that's the baseline. Of course we are. If we're not doing that, why are you hiring us?
Right. Well, and I tell people that too. Like, I don't know if you see this online a lot. Some of the worst advice I see people getting is they're coming out of school and they're like, I want to hang my own shingle. And people are telling them, open your own office. They've never tried a case. They have no idea about running a business. And I'm like, this person's going to get murdered in the marketplace forget about guys like us. Look at the John Morgans of the world. He eats those people for breakfast. Like, you can't compete with him. And you've never tried a case. Like, table stakes now is you better be able to deliver high-end results. And you don't even know what they look like. Some of these people are asking, what should I be settling this case for in a personal injury Facebook group? I'm like, dude, if you don't know that, you need to refer that case out. You're about to commit malpractice for this client, and it's a big case. I don't ever chime in. It's funny because Brian Glass writes me all the time. He goes, I have never seen such stupid commentary as this Facebook group you invited me to. Now, I invited him.
You invited me too. Thank you so much.
I may have invited you to John Fisher's Mastermind, but I invited you guys to these PI groups where if somebody's asking for a New Orleans lawyer or for a Virginia lawyer, I want you guys to benefit. But do you see some of the shit on that Facebook group? Like, are you kidding me?
They need the group, right, for the guidance. But to your point, somebody should say, hey, why don't you come with me? Like, I'll mentor you. Come work with me.
Right.
If you got a couple cases, like, you're almost your own firm within a firm anyway. But to your point, like, we don't get taught how to try cases in law school. We don't really get taught how to lawyer in law school. You sure as shit don't get taught how to be a business owner.
Right.
So if you're not going to go out there and try to absorb as much information as you can, particularly by joining a firm where you're going to get good mentorship and get thrown to the wolves sometimes so that you get your licks in, then you're going to come out and flounder, like you said.
You're going to get pummeled. This is something I've been observing because in the last, let's say 2 months, I've offered a couple of those mentorship partnership opportunities to people where I'm like, hey, come in, we'll establish a partnership on the cases that you have, and I'll show you what my team does. I'll open up my operations. You could plug right in. What I'm noticing, again, this comes down to self-awareness. It's not even just the money. I don't think it's greed. I'm going to tell you what I think it is. I've had people's responses, and it's typically very small practices. Their identities are so wrapped up, or their belief system is so wrapped up in, well, I spent 20 years doing this. What about my brand? I'm like, brand? Like, John Morgan's a brand, right? Like, if you're not spending that kind of money, like, what I'm offering is a plug and play system to help you scale. There's a disconnect because their identity is wrapped up in the name on the door. One of the best things I ever heard in doing this podcast. I started this because I want to talk to fascinating people doing cool things, right? And I find you in that league. Jen Gore was one of my favorite guests because Jen Gore said a phrase that resonated with me so much, which was, I stopped one day and asked myself, what if that belief no longer serves me? And I find myself saying that to people like, look, you just told me how miserable you are running a business. I have literally been compared to like an F-16 fighter jet of business organizational operations of law firms, and I'm offering you to plug in, and that's what you're talking about. You have to ask yourself check your belief systems, man. Like,
I'm with you. Someone asked me, why the firm, like similar to what you asked me. And I said, guys, you don't understand. I was a partner, partner in name only, but a partner at 2 different firms. I don't care. I only wanted that promotion because I knew it would help me generate better business, because no one's going to hire the associate, but they're to hire the partner. Right. And I told that to them. I'm like, not only do I deserve this, it's going to benefit you. You should give me that promotion. And I got it at the 2 firms that I was at before. But this is not an ego play, right? I'm running a business. If I had a partner and their name was Rude, we'd be doing the same thing.
Right. Well, you just said the magic word though. So pause on that for a second. I cannot believe how little self-awareness is out there and the role of ego. And I don't say ego in a positive way. I mean the role of ego in our space, and people aren't realizing the limitations it's putting on. Like you said, I'm a businessman first. I don't care whoever's last name was going to work for the branding I was going to do, right? And so that means you're thinking clearly. You're not thinking with ego, which is about self-identification, right? And
Tom, you know what matters the most? Picture on that desk behind me with the 2 little girls and my wife.
That you got to feed. You got to feed those people.
Right. That's what this is for. Like, if doing this is an ego play, you're going to end up one of those guys 30 years later with a broken marriage and kids who don't, they're resentful. I joked, my wife, she gives me a hard time sometimes about how much I'm working on the firm. And I said, Skylar, like, you understand that, yes, I work a lot on this firm, but we eat breakfast with our kids. We eat dinner with our kids. We take them to school. I'm going to school right now. Yep. That just means I got to work later, but I'm making that choice and I'm making that sacrifice for my life so I can spend the hours with the family the way I want to.
Right. And listen, I'll tell you, I recently joined a EO. I don't know if you're a member of EO. I highly recommend it if people are listening to it. It's not a small investment, but it is worth it. And so I was in a group and I realized like the feedback that you get from those groups is invaluable. Do you belong to any masterminds, Lee?
I was in a couple that seemed to have floundered. Okay. And this is something I've been exploring this year. I know we've talked a bit about the ones you're in.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they're invaluable. Yes. And I joke, it's like when you go to the conferences, the most important things you hear are the conversations in the hallway, not speakers.
Yep.
Right? It's the sharing of information 100%. With like-minded people that are having similar problems. And that's what the masterminds are. So yeah, they're awesome.
But one of the masterminds I belonged to was pretty awesome because if your why is what you're saying, right? Like it's your family. And that's my why. Same thing. So I get out of bed in the morning. Then I had to make sure that as I go into this next round of scaling, that my wife is taken care of emotionally, because I know my obsessive personality with this stuff. And it's 24/7, 365. So I started to have conversations around well-being for her and our marriage, because I was like, listen, all of this is for nothing if after 17 years this ends in divorce, right? You're going to have your trials and tribulations. I'm like, but I'm doing all of this. The why is to get out of bed in the morning is for you and my daughter. And so before we start the scaling that I'm about to do, which is big scale, because I finally figured out the formula after 25 years of trial and error, is I finally figured out the formula, and I'm like, but this is going to be challenging. And I made sure we talked about it first. And I made sure that every day we talk about what's the temperature of the relationship, because in 17 years, you can forget about all of that, get consumed with something. And then all of a sudden you're the next casualty. Like you said, you brought up all of the high incidence of divorce among lawyers. Nobody wants to go through that, but you got to get out ahead of it,
And like this year, I just came back from Florida for national trial lawyers, and everyone's been asking me, what are you going to do next? What's on your agenda? And I'm looking at the year, and I'm looking at the fall, for example. and the fall is jam-packed with stuff that I want to go to and participate in. But that's not a decision I can make by myself.
Right.
Because someone's got to hold down the fort, or I got to bring the family with me so I'm not seeing my kids for 10 days because I'm going to back-to-back conferences in California and Arizona. So there's a balance there. As much as you want to do it and it's great for your business and the growth and your personal growth, you got to worry about the casualties.
You have to, because everything you do, you're foregoing something else. And that foregoing something else, it has to be bought in. And there's got to be a compromise where maybe your wife's or your daughters say, hey, Dad, I'm good if you go to these two things, but I'd really love you home for this. Well, then you're going to make that sacrifice, because how many times can they hear no? And listen, if you're like me, and I think you are, dude, I could do this. I have boundless energy. I started today at 4:00. I could easily go to 4:00 in the morning on a couple of Red Bulls, keep going, work out until I crash. Right.
When someone says to me, they're like, oh, I was watching this on Netflix and that, I'm like, I have not watched a season of TV. I can't even tell you. Like, I don't have time to sit down and do that unless it's background noise while I'm really doing something else.
Right. So I know in some of the notes that you had on here, the topic of ethics comes up, right? And staying bold while managing the ethics side. How do you do that? Because I can tell you what I do, which is I have an ethics attorney on retainer who's fantastic. And all the scripting, all the text, everything that I want to put out there, I kind of run through him unless I know that it's, black and white, clearly there's no question.
Yeah, I have my own attorney that I've run like the stuff through at least once. And I know what you can say, what you can't say. And, for people that are listening, remember, when you're working with a marketing company, they're a marketing company.
Yes.
They're not looking into your ethics and your license, and tread lightly, because it's great to want to scale. But when I hear from some of these firms, oh, we're going to deliver signed retainers, I'm like, that sounds like buying a case, which in Louisiana is illegal, unethical, and will get you disbarred. So I don't want anything to do with that.
Right.
And I think, lucky for me, when we're out there advertising on social media through different platforms, like, we're getting cases. The brand, the messaging is resonating. So we're not desperate. I mean, I guess if you were desperate and you're willing to take that risk, that's something that you have to personally decide. I'm just not there.
No, I'm not either. I'm with you. I mean, look, I've been paying the same guy who I met through LinkedIn, believe it or not, but he's a local ethics lawyer. And I've been using him now. I think we're on our 3rd or 4th year where he's been on a monthly retainer. And my next call after this is I got a 4-point call I got to go through with him because I have ethics questions. That's his area of specialty. And like I told my COO today, I go, listen, I'm not a handy guy. I can't dig ditches. I'm 57. This is all I can do. So that's why I have an ethics bill every month, because I want to be on the right side of those questions. And I'm not desperate. I'd rather not take the business if I have to do something that is not in line with the ethical obligations that we have. Anybody that's listening to this, if you're going to jump into marketing, work in your budget, $1,000 a month for an ethics lawyer, right? That'll get you 2.5, 3 hours of ethical advice, but you can't do one without the other. In my mind, best practice is somebody who's doing aggressive marketing like you or me. You need ethics, right? You need ethical oversight, or it's the quickest way to lose your license, right?
Or just read the rules, right? I mean, there's enough out there that it's not that complicated, right? For us.
Right, things you can say, things you can't say.
Don't be fraudulent, misleading, or deceitful. And we really shouldn't have to tell you that.
Right. Again, that's table stakes, right?
Yeah, exactly. It should be the bottom of the barrel,
right.
But look where we are,
But
right?
You'd be surprised. Listen, there are guys now. Some of the biggest PI lawyers are doing pay for play in terms of not social media. I'm talking about paying for cases. Cash.
I know. I can't believe
auto body shops that they're co-advertising with, which you're not supposed to do. It's an ethics issue. You can't have your name on the back of an auto body shop's card. They're still doing it. But, to each his own. It's not my thing. So talk to me, because you've been scaling pretty rapidly. What is your take on infrastructure and tech and where it intersects with the scaling plan?
It was funny. I was just talking to a fractional CFO, and I said to him, if people are still afraid of virtual staff, of AI in some capacities, I think they're looking at it wrong, right? Our team is 14 and 9 are offshore. So that means I have a team that big, and the cost is not commensurate to the number of bodies.
Right.
Now, like with AI, you have to treat it like a tool. You have to treat your team members. They're only as good as the training you give them.
Yeah.
And again, we're talking about charlatans in the industry. A lot of companies will tell you, oh, they're trained on case management and intake, and it's bullshit. So I have my intake team is 2, and we have 1 offshore, 1 onshore. And when I saw the marketing really starting to work, I said, this would be foolish to spend all this money trying to acquire cases, acquire leads, and then to have this terribly leaky bucket because I don't know if my intake team is adequately trained and I don't have the time to be vetting them.
Right.
So we're using an AI intake tool that audits calls. I have an intake consulting group that is excellent out of South Carolina that they coach the team. They have quality control. They help with our tech implementation. They're reporting to us. They're vetting our AI intake receptionists. Like they're doing all this stuff. Like it's well worth the money. When you're spending tens of thousands of dollars out there in marketing, why wouldn't you spend it in training the team?
You have to. I will tell you that I've made every mistake you can make. I'm celebrating my 25th year in business. So for the first 18, 20 years, I'd hire somebody, be like, all right, I'm good. Put him at a desk, not a lick of training. I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know what, I mean, we would train them at a very surface level, paralegal, legal assistant, whatever, even for lawyers. You just think somebody's got 10 years of experience, they know what they're doing. No, wrong assumption. Even if they know what they're doing, they may not know how you want it done. So hiring is just the first step. It sounds so rudimentary, what I'm about to say. It was a massive discovery. Hiring's the beginning. If you're not training and onboarding somebody, you're setting them up for failure. And I have to own that because I was not good at any of that.
Well, I think the other thing too, Tom, is you got to know, what does the role actually require? What is it that makes somebody succeed in that role? Like, for example, I have an executive assistant from the Philippines, and I know exactly what I need. She doesn't have to be able to do everything, but the things that are really important to me, like inbox management, making sure that things get scheduled the way I want, right, so that I'm not interrupted every which way, kind of being that guard at the door.
Right.
She's killing it. Right. It's a godsend because now we're on this podcast for an hour and I don't have 40 emails that I have to tag and sort. And
right.
We're good because we work together. So she understands what do I need. And now we're just humming.
Yeah. But again, as somebody who goes heavy into marketing, and anybody that is listening to this, and let's say you're going to follow in the footsteps of what we're doing, don't just market. Don't just throw money at a marketing machine without your infrastructure, without making sure, like the first question I asked before I launched this other channel of marketing we were talking about before we came on is, are we ready on intake? Do we have a leaky bucket after hours? I'm not spending all this money. I want every intake, every retainer captured that I can capture. And so I'm already talking to my operators in-house to make sure we have what we need, right? So you have to look at infrastructure and you got to make sure you have your financing set up, right? That's how I know we're talking the same language about scaling, because you're talking about infrastructure, you're talking about tech, you're talking about financial needs and marketing, right? So it's all these things that come into play.
This is what hit me at the end of last year. And I was looking at it and I said, why is this way? Well, if you're adding more cases per month and every case that you have costs you at a minimum $500 to $1,000 in collecting medical records or maybe getting them to a provider or sending for Ubers. Well, now you're adding hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yes.
To your spend that you don't even see because it's not a big expense. It's like the death by 1,000 cuts.
I have used that phrase, death by 1,000 paper cuts, with my COO for the last 4 months. I have said, I need you to clamp down on this P&L. I need you to rip it apart. Like you were saying, a fractional CFO. This guy's a high level COO. And I've surrounded myself with these really good operators. I insisted I didn't want anybody with a law degree, right? I went to my recruiter. I said, I want a COO. Get me a very high level senior manager. And I got all of these different operators in place. I just didn't want lawyers, right? I wanted business people.
I know the fractional CMO you're working with. For anybody listening, you should seek out these advisors. I'm not saying that you should hire every single one of them right away because your needs might not require it. In fact, your fractional CMO, when I was talking to him again, he's like, I don't think you want me yet.
Oh, okay.
Like when you tell me you want to spend here, then I'm in. I want to work with you, but now's not the time. And I love that.
Right.
That's the feedback you want from a trusted advisor.
And I got to tell you, that guy, I have not had a marketing person on here in 140 episodes. Not one, for various reasons, but I don't want to put my name on somebody and then all of a sudden, like, if it's not somebody I can comfortably send to, right? Like, I know if I get a case in your neck of the woods, I'm comfortable sending to you, right? You've tried cases, you run it like a business, I'm good. For the first time ever, the fractional CMO, I'm going to have on because he's so good at what he does. He's so ethical and organized, and he runs it just a really tight ship.
And he's going to help you rise like a phoenix.
Oh,
right?
my God.
Yeah.
He's amazing, man. He's amazing. So thank you for coming on, man. I want to be respectful of your time because I know you have to get to your school with your daughter. Anything else you want to tell anybody out there listening, want them to know about you? What's the best place for them to connect with you?
Yes, I'm like you, Tom. I mean, we haven't been doing this all that long, but I've made a ton of different mistakes. I love figuring out how to put the puzzle pieces together, and I'm happy to talk to anybody. You can hit me up. My email's lee@getrud.com. On all our social, it's Get Rud Law. We have an 800 number, 833-GET-RUD. I'm really easy to find. Hit me up on LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever. And I'm happy to help you however I can, whether it's making a referral to a vendor or a fractional, whatever, because people were so kind with me. Folks like you, Tom, like having me on, being willing to shoot the breeze offline. Thank you. And thank you to everybody out there that's willing to help, young lawyers trying to find their way.
Absolutely. And listen, as long as I've been doing this, you helped me. I mean, I just called you up. I was like, look, I'm entertaining this vendor. Can you just give me a few minutes of your time? We ended up hitting it off and we were talking for 30 minutes, just kind of going over business and stuff. So I really appreciate all the help you gave me too.
Appreciate it, Tom.
Lee, thanks, man.
Man, Tom. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of Lead Counsel Podcast. Your host, Tom Tona. Go anywhere podcasts are distributed. Follow us. Leave us a 10-star review. Share some episodes with your friends. And thanks for listening. I appreciate it. Thank you. This episode is sponsored by Tona Law. They're not just another law firm. They're defining what it means to fight for their clients. We get a lot of attorney referrals from across the country. We pay fee participation in all jurisdictions where it's permitted. We focus on integrity, innovation, and relentless advocacy. Tona Law is proving that the business of law can scale without losing its heart. Do you want to see how a modern firm is built for impact and happy client referrals? Check out tonalaw.com. Mention again the Lead Counsel Podcast, and I'm happy to get on the phone with you.